Hi, this is Chaplain Tyler, and you're watching this video on You Got This with Tyler. So I'm going to start to relate a few of my stories. I've had some crazy experiences as a chaplain, things that a lot of people would never believe. And I'm going to be talking about the very first day that I ever had anything meaningful happen. I am going to relate this. This is from a Christian point of view, but this is not from a churchy kind of point of view. This is not me looking at theology and saying all the right things about how God never gives us more than we can bear, or God meant for this to happen because he's in control of all things. And that's just, those are platitudes, and I don't use those. I want to be real about what I experience. I want to be honest about exactly what it is that was going on in my mind and in my heart. And that first day on call was brutal. So hopefully you'll find this interesting. Hopefully you'll learn a few things. And I sure did, and I'll let you know what those were. You have to understand, I was a very, very young chaplain. And not really tried in life yet. I was 29, and I had experienced a lot of loss, but I hadn't really understood what all these things meant. And so what occurred, you have to also understand that 6 months prior to me going into the practicum of the chaplaincy, which is what I was doing at first, it was a 3.5 to 4 month long internship. And 6 months before I started that internship, my beloved grandmother died. And she died in the emergency department of the particular trauma hospital that I ended up doing an internship in. It was really hard for me to go back to that hospital where my grandmother had died, because it was obviously, I was still grieving. I was sorrowful, and it was painful. And so I had some reservations about it, but it was the right thing. So I did. Now, 1 week into orientation is 2 weeks. 1 week into orientation, they asked the interns if anybody needed or wanted to take a turn on a 24-hour on-call day. It's only for 24 hours because in that particular trauma hospital, the acuity was so high that the potential for a lot of trauma was there. So the chaplains never took more than a 24-hour on-call. They couldn't. It was just too much. So I thought, well, why not? So another intern took Saturday on a weekend, and I took the Sunday. And when I went to go pick up the pager, at that time it was a pager, so it was a few years ago now, I asked him how his shift went. And he went, oh, it was great. I never got any calls. I didn't have to worry about anything. I'm like, oh, I could do that. That's good. That's no problem. So I start getting ready to go to the church I was going to at the time, and the pager goes off, and I very quickly go and phone the number that comes up, and it turns out it's the emergency department of the trauma hospital, and they have a family whose father-like figure had a stroke in the middle of a church service, and they wanted me to come and to take some time to be with the family. Well, in my background, I had a grandfather who also had a stroke in a Sunday service. We had to actually take him out of the service on a pew, lift him up, and off we went. And so I thought, hey, I've had something like this before. I can do this. I was okay. So I came into the hospital, and I worked with that family, and yes, the man had a stroke. he was going to be transferred up to the stroke unit. I worked with them and just gave them some comfort and let them know that I didn't say much. I was just there to help and answered any questions they had about where was God in this and what would this mean and all I could say is I don't know. I have had this happen to my grandfather, and I know how scary it is, and it's going to take a long time for Dad to recover, but he can get better, and that's my hope and my prayer. So I felt good. I felt like I could do that one. I went home. I was tired. That's a lot of energy expenditure for me. And I thought, okay, I can rest now. So I started to rest. And in the middle of the afternoon, I got a second page and called in, and it was the emergency department again. And this time, they needed me to come to be with a First Nations woman whose brother was dying. And I thought, okay, I don't know how to help First Nations, but I can come and be there and see what I can do. Little did I realize that this particular person and this situation would be something that would hit me extremely hard. When I got to the emergency department, they directed me into the trauma bay. And there were at that particular emergency department, there were 6 trauma pods. And when you come in, on the left-hand side is 1, 2, and 3. And then it goes 4, 5, and 6 on the right-hand side. And they directed me to Trauma Bay 2, or B. And when I went in, here was the First Nations gentleman dying from liver failure and just not taking care of his body and abusing it with a lot of drugs and alcohol. And I was there to provide comfort for the sister. The problem was that this was the exact bed that my grandmother had died in 6 months previous. The exact spot. And as I started to try to help and be there for these 2 people who needed me, I literally was seeing my grandmother dying in the bed instead of the First Nations man. And I couldn't function. I couldn't cope. All of the emotion just came up, and all of the unresolved grieving and sorrowing, and I excused myself. I tried not to show that I was in difficulty. And I went outside, and I did what I now call a power cry, where I purposely let all of the emotion come, and all of the unresolved, all the sorrow and everything that I hadn't processed yet. I let it all come up, and I just bawled outside. And I didn't care if people saw me. I didn't care about any of that. I cared about how I was affecting those 2 people in there who needed me. And I was not going to let my unresolved grief stop me from being able to help them. So I did that power cry, and I just let it out. Didn't take long. About 10 minutes, I just sat there and bawled. At the end of 10 minutes, I was okay again, more or less. And I composed myself, got myself under control, went back inside, and was able to help and be there for the sister of this man. And we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about how he had come to this place and what had occurred, and I talked with her about some next basic steps and what they can look forward to. Not in terms of, I tried not to talk about if he dies, because, and I'll tell this as another story later. I learned that I was never comfortable talking around people who were unconscious as if they were going to die. And I learned that they can hear. And I'll tell a story about that on another video, a really dramatic story. But I was with them for a good 45 minutes to an hour, and I was hanging in. And then my pager went off again. And it was a different unit up in the hospital. And this time was I had to come to talk with two parents who had questions about what they could say or should say to their teenage daughter, who had been in a car accident with a grandfather, and the grandfather had died, and she didn't know about it yet. So they were in the hospital with her, and she was starting to ask questions, and they didn't know what to say or to do. Well, I didn't know what to say or do. All I could think of was, in order to respect her and her process, it's probably wise to be honest. Careful and very sensitive, but to be honest and not to sugarcoat it. I know that as a teenager, I was a lot more cut off from my emotions, but I still appreciated honesty and directness. That helped me a lot. So that's all I could basically say and do. So I meet with them. Now I am dead tired. I mean, I have gone through the ringer here. I've processed the grieving that I had for my grandmother. I've worked with 3 different families now in the day, in intense trauma situations. And I was so tired. And I took the chart for the girl that the parents had that were there for, and I took the chart because as a chaplain we're part of the interdisciplinary team, and so we chart. And so I took the chart, and I remember placing it down on the desk. I took the pager, I put the pager up on the shelf right in front of a window on the unit, and I looked at that pager and I said, "No, stay," because I was done. And the most hilarious thing is that the pager went off at that exact second again. Exact. And I thought to myself, you gotta be kidding me. This is insane. Oh man. So I was already in the hospital. So I went to that call after I did my charting, and I don't remember what it was. I don't remember. I was too tired. I know it was regarding another death, because that first day was a hard day, 3 or 4 deaths. And all I could do was try to make it through. I went home after that and I prayed that there would not be any more, because I couldn't take it. I was done. But that first day, what it did is it taught me a few different things. First thing it taught me is I didn't need to fear. I had been so afraid of what I might experience. I was so afraid of not knowing if I could help or make a difference. I didn't know anything, and I was scared to death of saying something wrong or doing something that actually hurt somebody or something along those lines. I just couldn't. I was so scared, and I didn't need to be. So that first on-call day killed a lot of fear. Second thing I learned, and again, I'm talking from a Christian perspective. Second thing I learned is that God knows exactly what each of us needs in order to do what He has called us to do. And He knew that I needed to be broken in, so to speak. He knew, and the very first call was to something I could identify with because I'd been through it. And the second situation I got called for was to deal with, and it was an opportunity for me to deal with the unresolved grief that was holding me. And it was such a, I don't want to say burden, but it was so poignant and so much a part of my heart still. And there was the direct opportunity to deal with that. And I'm very grateful for that, because I don't know if I would have been able to do all the things that came after that if that grief hadn't have been addressed. It was a gift, although it was brutally hard. So that was my first day on call. Hadn't even finished orientation. Didn't know anything. Was a super young chaplain. And I thought, if this is how it's going to be, how am I going to survive? But I did. And I have hundreds of stories of incredible things that I've seen and been a part of. And I hope that you'll share this journey with me as I relate more of them. Hopefully you found this interesting and encouraging. And I look forward to sharing with you some more. In the meantime, this is Chaplain Tyler signing off. And again, you're watching this video and you got this with Tyler. I see you out there. I know how hard life can be. And I believe in you. And I really believe you got this. Take care.